Alrighty. So I kind of wanted to go through. I'm going to kind of explain um, what patriarchy is from what I've come to understand it, and what I can give in what my estimation of what it is from all the things that I've collected over the course of time. What this is not necessarily anything that's really grounded well within any sort of like archetypes or anything, but what it is it's grounded in you know traditions and history and things I've come to know and learn of as I've gone throughout my life, where I've constructed this idea of what it is. But before we do that, I'm gonna go through this video of this weird lady trying to explain why patriarchy is bad, and the straw man version of it, or not the straw man version of it, but even within her assertion of what it is, it's still not bad just on his face. But we're going to watch this video real quick. I'm going to get warmed up a little bit. I'm going to get a little bit, I'm going to get zenned up. I'm going to take my second zen. Well, this is the third zen of the day. We're going overboard. We're taking 3 zens a day. But we'll go through this. See if anybody actually shows up that wants to see the main portion of what I'm going to talk about anyways. We're going to do this. I need to go ahead and post this shit out real quick. And then also, once I'm done with this, I'm going to... I don't typically do this with people that are... I don't care. Just give me a few minutes. I would have done this before this started, but I can't do that. Alright, so I'm gonna go through this video for a minute. Then I'm going to then explain how patriarchy is not actually a bad thing and that people fundamentally misunderstand what patriarchy is. So we're gonna watch this video real quick. It's not very long, and I probably won't watch the whole thing.
To affect us today. Before we start, I want to establish 2 important points. First of all, I talk about patriarchy with love and compassion for people, and that means the whole human family.
Don't care. Don't give a shit. Your emotions don't mean anything. I don't fucking care.
World are my husband and our 4 children, and we want a world that is fair and allows all of them to thrive.
There's no such thing as fairness within society or in the world as in general as a whole. There is fairness in aspects of, grace afforded to people, but it's never going to be fair. Nothing's fair. It's not fair that I'm bigger and stronger than most people. It's not fair in comparison even to most men. It's not fair that, it's not fair that I have certain aspects of my life that have benefited me. It's not fair that I don't have a lot of things that other people have that's benefited them to make them have a better lease on life and a better start, but whatever. There's no such thing as fair. So when they're saying fair, okay, we're going to keep going.
And our son. So whoever you are, regardless of your gender, I will be addressing you with kindness and respect. You're not only welcome here, you're needed.
Oh, this is so fucking gay.
Second, I talk about
Did I even unmute the damn... Did I even unmute... Okay, thank God.
Have you ever had a conversation where both of you just talked past each other and ended up feeling frustrated?
I have a feeling this is every conversation she's ever had with anybody. But yes, of course, people are two different individuals. They process words differently, cognitively, in the cognitive way, and they can't. Sometimes people just can't understand the concepts being expressed and how they're expressing them and how they're intending them to be expressed. That's generally why I have good faith with most people. I try to understand it in the way that I can process it, and I don't try to push on it, right? Unless it's a debate, then I don't care.
I have. And a lot of times that happens because people lack a common vocabulary. If when I say patriarchy, I'm picturing the Taliban, and when you say patriarchy, you're picturing your sweet, gentle grandpa, it's
right. So you're picking it between a false dichotomy. You're also taking two different categories of patriarchy, and you're asserting them as both the same. The grandfather would be a patriarch in the familial sense. The Islamic culture would have a patriarchy as a social effect, right?
likely that we're
So
going to
these are two different categories.
misunderstand each other, and we won't be able to have a productive conversation. If only there was some sort of book or online reference that we could all go to for a common definition of what words.
All right, you sarcastic. Okay, I'm about to start.
The dictionary definitions of
Okay.
patriarchy are a system of society or government in which the father or eldest male is head of the family.
Yes. So this is what I mean. The definition of patriarchy is so mixed together now, that it's hard to have conversations with people about patriarchy, and I agree with her on this. I hate to say it, but I agree with her on this, that it's hard to have conversations, but this kind of definition here mixes both categories of what societal patriarchy and familial patriarchy is. They're not the same thing. They're two separate things that exist, right? They're two separate concepts.
And descent is traced through the male line, and a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it.
Right. So then this secondary definition is maybe more accurate. And within that definition, I don't think that the secondary definition is wrong in a societal sense. I don't think that it's bad to do that. You can exclude people for being generally incapable of performing a certain action, right? But it doesn't mean that there's not individual particulars where there's exceptions. So when exclusion is given, right, it's not necessarily a system of oppression, right? We'll go into that in a little bit.
Now let's go to the etymology, which means the root.
I don't give a shit about your etymology.
It means being men. It's a that will persist culture of misogyny, which just by elevated status in relation to women that baby inherits elevated status in relation to women that will persist.
When you're talking about elevated status, what does that mean? Do you think that leadership automatically means that you have a higher status? Leadership might be a role, a duty that you perform. Let me make sure that I'm right on this. Okay, so yeah, it is I was right. So a status in itself does not automatically mean, a privilege that's given. A status means it's just, a position. It's a position within the social or professional standing, right? So you could, within hierarchy, the status itself is not necessarily good or bad. It depends on how the person's performing that.
Throughout its life, just by virtue of being male. This little boy might
But
grow up
it's,
in a culture.
but even in that idea of they're given a specific status because they're a male does not mean that it is a privilege given. What it means is that there are different duties that a man has that puts them in the place of where they're responsible in this role. They're responsible as being the leader. And within a societal sense, your responsibility as the patriarch within the greater patriarchy as a whole is to maintain order. And what that means, male in the patriarchal societal role, is the enforcement. We enforce things, and we enforce them with force, with our strength. That's how we do it. So it's a status that is given to us by biology and by our role given to us by God. So when you're thinking about that, you're thinking that it's unfair, but what it is a natural effect of what we have, what our capabilities, what our purpose is that has been given, and what our capabilities are biologically.
Of misogyny, which in Greek means hatred of women.
Yes.
You might learn that men
So
have to be
within a patriarchal system, right, it's not necessary that you hate women. In fact, it'd be pretty terrible to be a patriarch and to hate women. Why would you hate women? Now, you can hate certain aspects of degenerate women that causes a system to eat itself, right? But it's not necessarily hating a woman because, she would be a hoe, right? You hate her, you don't hate her for saying, I hate that you're a hoe. Stop being a hoe. That would be actually something that's an enforcement arm of the matron. The matron matriarchy role that women have within patriarchy.
in charge of women because women are inferior and untrustworthy. And so
Not that they're inferior or untrustworthy. They are, well, inferior in what? Inferior in capability of enforcing a law? Yes. Inferior in capability of leadership roles? For the most part, yes, but there are individual particulars that can include women that have that capability of leadership roles. But that does not mean, but that does not mean that the individual exceptions make up the general rule. The general rule is the same.
they need to be controlled. Another little boy might.
It's not that women need to be controlled. It's that women naturally follow. This is something that people don't seem to understand. It's very rare for women to be involved in types of social groups without being influenced by that social group themselves. Men fall for it too, but it's not as common. Men will generally be able to be in a group of people and make a decision that goes against the general understanding of what that group is to do what is right. Women have most women, because once again, there are individual particulars that are exceptions within the case, but generally women tend to follow the group mindset. They don't resist the consensus of the opinion of the room. Men have a higher capability of that, so that gives them a greater edge within the leadership type of role.
Grow up in a culture of benevolent patriarchy. He might learn that men need to be in charge of women because women are weak and delicate and need to be protected.
Well, it's not that that's somewhat true, but it's not weakness in that they're incapable of making decisions themselves. It's weakness from the physical nature of what men and women are. Women are weaker than men. So men must protect women from other men. Men must protect women from nature. Men must protect women from a lot of different things. It's a duty that men have. And what was the other part? I forgot a little bit.
Need to be in charge of women because women
Women
are weak and delicate and need to be.
So the delicate part, I think, is just a reassertion of what's already been said. The delicate nature of a woman is that they are physically weaker than the general man, or I would even say that probably the lowest tier strength man could probably, physically destroy the higher tier women. But um, even within that, like, it's still not a bad thing to assert that women are physically weaker and do need some type of protection.
Protected. Misogynistic patriarchy and benevolent patriarchy come from very different beliefs and intentions, but both versions put men in a position of primacy where they get to define the terms for everyone else. Now,
No, that is a secular sort of enlightenment assertion. That is not true within patriarchy. What a true patriarchy is within the Christian ethical framework, right? Christian ethical framework. This is what true patriarchy is. And within that patriarchal duty that men have within that framework, there are things that you cannot do, enforced by something higher than man. So it's not men having just a primacy over doing whatever they want to women. That's ridiculous and absurd. It's the duty given to you by God.
Maybe some men watching this who think, wait, I don't feel this privilege and power. In fact, in some cases, I feel the opposite. And that makes sense, because there are some things that patriarchy does not mean. Patriarchy does not mean that men have easy lives. A boy who suffers from chronic pain may have a much more
right. So let's let her finish.
Than a girl who doesn't. A man who lives in poverty may experience much more hardship than a woman who has access to material wealth. In fact, in some circumstances like caste systems and racial hierarchies, men belonging to a lower caste can have challenges that, on the balance, make their actual everyday lives much harder than the lives of dominant caste women. Men in these circumstances may struggle in nearly every sector of society, except at home. These same men who operate in a race or caste-based hierarchy out in the world can come home and find themselves in a gendered hierarchy that gives them authority and privilege in relation to women of their same caste.
So when you're talking about the societal patriarchy stand, yeah, patriarchy enforces duty on men, and men that don't have or don't commit to that duty, yes, they are punished. And some men fall beneath the cracks and fall underneath the societal standard, or not even falling underneath the societal standard, but have failed in other duties that they have and land themselves in positions of inferiority towards the different aspects of life. There are some cases where, like Jim Crow and stuff that happened, that certain racial groups are suppressed or separated out. But even within that concept, even if you remove all of that, it's still, yes, it does not mean patriarchy automatically means privilege for men. Thank you for defeating the argument. So now you're going to move on the familial patriarchy, which is going to be another probably ridiculous assertion.
Remember that women experience race and caste oppression too. And by the way, women also experience physical and mental illness and poverty. And on top of that, in patriarchy, women also experience gender-based oppression. Another thing that patriarchy doesn't mean.
Okay, so that didn't explain anything within the household, how the patriarch in a household automatically oppresses the woman that they are married to. That makes no sense. You've just asserted it. You've not actually given an argument for it.
Patriarchy does not mean that all men have positions of leadership. Usually, the way patriarchy works is that a small group of men presides over all the other men, and they may exclude or oppress other men for a whole host of reasons that may not be fair at all and that cause real injustice and pain. We see this in the United States Constitution, which completely excluded men of color and men who were too poor to own land from civic participation. And it excluded all women because they were women.
Well, even, I'm pretty sure, I don't know this for a fact, and I haven't looked it up in a while, but I'm pretty sure that as long as a woman owned land, she could actually vote. And the separation of like women being capable of voting was just the inability to own the land itself. So there wasn't actually a need to change the entire Constitution or change aspects of the Constitution to allow women to vote uh, in the aspect of like land ownership or capability of that. It was just giving them the ability to own land in their own name would have given them the ability to vote without having to give all women the ability to vote. Which would have been fine. I'd have been okay with that. I would have been way more okay with that than just everybody getting to vote.
Next, patriarchy does
Universal
not mean
suffrage
that
is dumb.
every man uses his authority and privilege over the women in his life. Many men feel uncomfortable with this unearned privilege, and some...
It's not uncomfortable with this unearned privilege. A lot of men, especially in society today, are uncomfortable with the duties that are prescribed through what is being a patriarch.
Men may even abdicate that privilege, the way King Edward VIII abdicated the throne as King of England. But keep in mind that his birthright was his to keep or his to give away. And patriarchy doesn't mean that there are no women with power. Think of Queen Elizabeth or Oprah, or maybe your own very spunky grandma. These women do have a lot of power, but they don't have power because they're women. They have power in spite of the fact.
Which is total horseshit. Okay, so within familial structures, in multi-generational types of family, there are matrons within the patriarchy that have authority over the generation below them. And the reason that they have that authority is because there are responsibilities and duties that the men that are in the generational line below them must fulfill to them. So in a status of privilege, if you're talking about privilege, women have, specifically within the matron role in patriarchy, far more privilege than disprivilege, not based on just the ability to lead, which matrons can lead families if there is no patriarch on that same level in the generational family. What it is that matrons do not have that enforced duty. So a matron can be a leader of that family in that role, but it's not a duty that they have to fully commit to beyond just the familial like helping and guiding of the home. And when we're talking about the home, for the most part, women make the majority of decisions within the home. It's just the man has the final say of whether or not that happens. So women generally would have within the home itself better knowledge to what's going on within the home in a general sense. So they would be able to inform the leader of that home better. So it's a synergistic submission. What it means is that women work with their husbands so that the husbands can make the best decisions and trying to protect and keep the family together. That's what the family is. So because man has the final say within the home does not mean that the woman is incapable of doing anything. What it means is that there is a synergistic role within that familial structure, and that women have a lot more say than what feminists specifically say so. Just because they don't have the final word does not mean they don't have the ability to help guide that.
That they're women. Let's talk about that spunky grandma. She may rule the roost, and everyone, including your grandpa, may defer to her in the family. But if she... That's a failure of the patriarchy. And might defer to her. What does that mean? Because defer to her, what is that could mean that, yes, I don't know about this. You should go ask the matron of the family. And that's not deferring to her authority. Well, it's deferring to her authority, but within the structure of patriarchy itself. The grandfather within the family unit would have the say of whether or not, ultimately, whether or not that what she's saying has any sort of authority over you. So yes, if there is no grandfather, the matron has free reign to use that authority as a matron over the previous generations. And it's the duty of the man in the lower part of the generation to
protect and provide for the woman in the matron role above him, but to also pay heed to the extra wisdom that may be accrued through her life. So the ultimate authority might still reside with a son of of reasonable age, but it does not mean that, once again, that just because she doesn't have the final say doesn't mean that she doesn't have an ability to maintain the family as a whole.
She happens to be a member of a conservative religion, for example, then it's likely that on her.
All right, so we got through that. I think I've warmed up a little bit. Now we're going to go to the thing I want to explain, because a lot of what people think what patriarchy is on an individual sense and a societal sense is kind of warped, right? So let's see if I can get this. We're going to go to paint. We're going to have a paint stream, okay? Here we go. Let me get rid of this garbage. It's on my screen. So, hold on. Where are we at? There we go. So, this is what patriarchy is in total. Like society, I'm combining the entirety of patriarchy from a societal sense all the way down to the family. So at the top, fuck, can't fucking see my mouse. Okay, there we go. So at the top, what do you have? You have, fuck me. You have monarchs. Now, monarchs, there are a lot of different types of monarchs, specifically in our type of day. We have government structures that are built up of very monarchical systems, right? But the power is usually distributed through other sections of it. So the monarchs are presidents. Business. Oh, can't fucking spell. Owners. We're just gonna ignore that I can't spell, okay? Business owners. Military leaders. And let's see. Trying to think of something else. But this is like the top, right? Monarchs, presidents, business owners, military leaders. Those would be the top of what is a patriarchy. Now, granted, a president would be a little bit higher. So maybe these would be better to put. Maybe we'll just put them a tier lower. What the fuck is going on? Okay, well, I can't, apparently I can't fucking delete them. So we'll just grab it. You go here. And you go here. Well, I would say military leaders probably still within the same category, just slightly lower. But within patriarchy, as a general societal thing that occurs within 99% of all societies that's ever existed, this is the very top: monarchs, presidents, military leaders at the peak of society, right? And then the second category would be business owners, leaders, Congress, House. Wait, the House of Congress. This is Senate. I can't fucking spell. Senate. So this would be the second tier, right? The Congress and the Senate. Most, like in places in, like America or something, would have Congress and Senate raised above what it should be at. these types of governmental systems, they most fuck me. Okay. Back. Most political systems now have these up here. They don't actually belong up here. This is why a lot of the systems that have these dilutions of dilutions of power at the head generally don't last very long and fail or degenerate very quickly. It's because they break the patriarchal type of order within society, and they put both of these up to the same level, if not higher, than the matriarchs and presidents and military leaders. Now, where they actually belong is a tier below. Like they inform these three, but they are not. They should not have the same authority as these three. Now, this is where we get into the part of more familial and interpersonal types of patriarchy. Now, in the interpersonal types of patriarchy, the tier right below this is police. Leaderships within business. Is leaderships within businesses. And grandfather oh, and I did forget to put one here, church. So I forgot to put church up there, but yeah, church is part of this type of authority. You could make the argument that it may be more. Fuck me. I hate this shit. Well, you could make the argument that it belongs more so down here, but me, in my perfect governmental system, they would be right here. They'd both be right next to each other within the social order. So, police leaderships within business, and then I'm separate. I'm also like this is the same categories, but the reason that some are lower or higher are there. It's for a reason. And so let me put this one a little bit lower. So what we understand as patriarchy, and this is how I said, this is where at the top it's the government. It goes down to the lower levels of the government, and then it goes down lower into where it kind of blurs between what is the social and familial structure. So within this, there is police leadership within businesses, which means general management, and it bleeds over towards family a little bit with the grandfather and uncles. Well, I wouldn't even say uncles belong. Oh my fucking god! I can't fucking do this. Get rid of this shit. Okay, I didn't want this here. Get rid of it. It was a mistake. All right. So, grandfathers would be something that's enforced, that's kind of blurred between a societal and familial thing. It is inherently part of the family, but it's also separated directly from the main unit of individual families. So they are part of it, and they're like the transitionary thing between familial and societal. So grandfather, as in that grandfather in all of his generation to have a greater authority from a societal sense. So maybe I'll just add that to it. All right, somehow we've managed to get a different, totally different fucking font on it now. But so the grandfather and his generation are right below, right above where patriarchy tries to transition towards the family, and then within the family itself, it is father, son, and a little bit below that is uncle, and a little bit below that is male cousin, I guess. So this would be the structure of the family itself: the father, the son, the uncle, male cousin. So the uncle is kind of like in it more of an in between state, kind of more like, so uncle would be kind of like here, not exactly even with the son, maybe a little bit lower. So when you, but this is the basics of what the patriarchy is. Now, there are different duties that men must adhere to within each of these categories. The duty of the top of the patriarchy would be a duty to the safety of the people, a duty of leadership to the people, and a duty to enforce. These, even if the people don't want them to. So this is the duties within what would be the patriarchy at the top. At this section, this would be a duty for the people's voice to inform, a duty to follow the voice of the people to inform, the top, and a duty to refer and cooperate with enforce. So those are the two main duties of what it is to be in this section of that. And fuck man, whatever. We're gonna let it bleed over to the side. But this is um do the duties here. What the duties are for the, let me move this fucking thing. And this here would be the duties of the transitionary between what is the government itself and the culture. This is where, yeah, I think this is where I bet. This is why I was sort of thinking church probably belongs. Fuck me. The church probably belongs more so here within what I understand, within this structure. So it's both equal and part of a different section of it. So within this part of the duties that the patriarchy has, a duty to enforce protection, a duty to enforce cultural norms, and a duty to guide families. And a duty, this is one specifically to this part of it, though. This isn't necessarily part of those other two. This is where the kind of blurs a little bit. The duty, because these are also two of the duties within this part. A duty to guide family as a whole. So within that, now these are all responsibilities that kind of compile on top of each other. And within the familiar structure itself, this is what the patriarchy is, where the base level of it, at the very foundation of what all of this authority is built off of. So within the family unit itself directly, there is a duty to protect physically, whatever. I probably misspelled that. But duty to protect spiritually. Oh, I spelled that. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. And a duty to protect intellectually. I'm gonna mess this intellectual. We'll just do this. Duty to protect intellectually, or and another way of phrasing it, philosophically. And a duty to provide stability. God. Stability. 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 So a duty to provide stability, a duty to protect intellectually, philosophically, a duty to protect physically, a duty to protect spiritually, and a duty to enforce moral normativity. I can't spell that word apparently. And a duty to enforce moral foundation. So within this is kind of the baseline of what within a patriarchy, how it's supposed to look, and the methods in which the duties in which each one of these parts of the patriarchy must adhere to. There is a greater responsibility at the bottom in the individual. There's probably even some more that I'm just not thinking about. let me think just for a second. A duty to protect physically, spiritually, philosophically, a duty to provide stability, a duty to enforce moral foundation, and a duty to ensure I had it in my head. Finance. Well, that's not that. Whatever. That's fine. That's good enough. Financial security. Now, a lot of people will take this as like a duty to be the main breadwinner. That's not what it is. Within the familial structure, within this internal core, you could have a father and a son who makes more than the father and can help provide something to the household. It's not his primary duty to do that. But if you are living in a multi-generational type of family, that the son could have higher financial status and would also could be considered the breadwinner of the family, but still be part and have to be submitted to the father as a whole. So there are different aspects of this. You could have multiple sons who, in a group setting or grouping, make more money in general than the father of that household, but the son, as a duty of living in that household, has a duty to ensure help to assist in the financial security of the household. And it's also a duty of women to be part of this. So this is a duty that's not even necessarily exclusive to a man, but it is an exclusive. It's a duty that they have. So this is what patriarchy looks like if you look at it as a duty-based system and not a very baseline idea that is just built on privilege and just assuming that because they have the final say, that automatically means that they are oppressing anybody below them. That's not what patriarchy is. Patriarchy requires a lot of things for it to be a just patriarchy. And also, let me see, and it's also not an exclusive claim to specifically defending women as a whole through society. And here's another duty. Oh, I already put cultural norms. Never mind. I thought I did. But this is pretty much complete. There's probably some things I could add to it, but you know, you to enforce these even if people don't want them to. Okay, so actually, I'm going to change this once again because I do think that I originally had the church at the right place up here. I just think I forgot to add a duty to this. I'll just write it here. A duty to create cultural norms. Okay, I misspelled that. Cultural norms. Or a duty to, it wouldn't be that. Let me get rid of that. It would be a duty to enforce God's cultural prescription. All right, I think I've misspelled that word, whatever. I don't care. We're moving on. I actually want to move on to something else in a minute. Hey, Cat. So, oh my lord, what have I done? So, this is what patriarchy looks like as a whole. This is a far more complex system of a just patriarchy than what's being asserted as the strong man from the general idea, specifically from feminist literature, of what it is. The assertion of leadership being automatically a role in which gives only benefits to the top is actually an assertion of tribalism. That's tribal patriarchy. That's ungodly heathen patriarchy. This is what actual patriarchy in the truest form that I can understand as God prescribes is at the top, monarchs, church presidents, military leaders, a duty to enforce cultural prescriptions, a duty to the safety of the people, a duty to leadership to the people, a duty to enforce these even if the people don't want them to. That's the top. The second is the business, Congress, and Senate, a duty to follow the voice of the people to inform the top, a duty to refer and cooperate with enforcement. And the tier below that, police, leadership within businesses, and grandfathers. It would be a duty to enforce protection, a duty to enforce the cultural norms, a duty to guide the family as a whole. That's more of just a duty to guide the family as a whole is more of just a singular like grandfather and his generation. That's a duty to that's let's move that. I've actually changed my mind on this. That's not really a transitionary thing. That's just kind of straight up just the family. Okay, I'll fuck that up. So within this tier of it would be police and leadership and business, a duty to enforce protection, a duty to enforce cultural norms. And at the very bottom of this, there would be the bedrock of what society is built on. This is actually the most authoritative part of this entire system. Without this, you cannot have anything at the top. All of these things at the top cease to exist. You cannot do any of these things without the bottom being the bedrock in which everything is based on. Father, son, uncle, male cousins. So within this, they have a duty to protect physically, a duty to protect spiritually, a duty to protect intellectually / philosophically, a duty to enforce moral foundation, a duty to provide stability, a duty to ensure financial security. And specifically, grandfather and his generation, which is slightly above the father and the son and uncle, is a duty to guide the family as a whole. So they would have to do, their primary thing is the duty to enforce the moral foundation. So this is ultimately what the patriarchy is meant to be in its truest set, right? But within that, now we have the part that nobody really understands or talks about. Hold on. And then I'm probably going to rush through this last part. But close this. Where did I put the other thing? Here we go. All right, so this is the matrons within patriarchy. What are their duties? Going to be honest, there's not a whole lot here. And there's not really a whole lot here. These are kind of blank. Sorry. Well, no, that's not even true. Let me see. Let me try to think. So within this would be the church. Would be the church. And this is the matrons within patriarchy. So there are things that there would be above, that. But this is just to show like the matrons within the patriarch, their duties and the things that they have access to. So within what time is it? Hell, I think I'm gonna. So this is more a difficult thing because this is actually things that are harder to figure out without specifically trying to seek for it, because these are not like inferior roles. They're still roles, but they're within the patriarchy themselves. Patriarchy, in the societal sense, is in the groups of a handful of men. So a lot of men would be in the same position as a lot of women within the society itself. But the church, um, then there would be government here, cultural, and then family. So within this, these are the general things that they would be duty bound to commit within these four uh, categories. The church, to ensure or to enforce cultural, or to enforce um well, maybe not enforce, to inform and to help enforce church norms. So that's for the most part what their duty is within the church, is to inform and to help enforce church norms, which means that a woman in a church can know more about the understanding of how to live the life of Christ, or can understand it a little bit better than somebody else, and can help guide them within that setting. It just doesn't mean that they would be the head of the church and be giving out the gifts, right? Or be any type of prima authority over it. Government, to enforce cultural norm and to enforce standards. And to inform standards. This is the duty of a matron within the patriarch, is to do these three things. And within these two, to enforce, what they mean, what I mean is like a literal, like cultural enforcement. That just means it's a social pressure, a social enforcement of it. So probably should add that, but I'm not going to. I'm trying to get through this last part because I want to play a game. Um, so actually, I think I fucked up here. We're gonna move this on down here because this actually belongs more so here. So within the category below that, you would have to inform standards, and to a duty to maintain standards. Whatever. I think I'm misspelling that, but I really don't care right now. I'm tired and I'm ready to play a game and not think. So within the cultural sense, it would be to inform the standards and a duty to maintain that standard. Within the family, it would be a duty to child, a duty to child. I had this idea in my head. Now I'm getting tired and I'm forgetting. A duty to protect, protect child, and a duty to inform husband. A duty to enforce rules of husband. A duty to cooperate with husband. I probably should have put that within the male part of the patriarchy too, because a man does have a duty to cooperate with the wife. It's just there's different aspects of that. Well, we'll just go through the aspects of it then. Duty to provide household stability. Now, the patriarch themselves, they're supposed to enforce the emotional stability, right? But the household stability itself and the generally, the household stability is towards the wife. And a duty to educate children and enforce the church norms. So there's not. I could probably separate them into individual things, like what different types of matrons within patriarchy are supposed to do, like a grandmother, but they would basically be the same as if you were to take grandmothers. So we'll take family mothers and grandmothers. So within specifically what grandmothers would be, it would be almost the exact same as the it would be almost the exact same as the grandfathers, right? A duty to continue a duty to inform family below fellow below. I don't know why that seemed wrong to me. Family below. So this is the roles that matrons have within patriarchies, right? And they actually have a pretty prevalent and important role within society itself. They have a duty to enforce cultural things through social pressure. And they also have many duties within the household that are required that people don't really think about. So this is the matrons within the patriarchy. So there we go. I have had, for some reason, I don't know why, I have been having my brain melting. I was on a philosophical overload all day, and I was like, I need to get this out of my brain. I need to get this out of my brain. So I got it out of my brain. I'm going to start a new stream, and we're going to play a game in a minute. I'm probably going to go, because I just ran in here and just immediately started kind of streaming after I ate a sandwich to do this. I'm going to go take a shower real quick. I'll be back in like 30 minutes on a separate stream. So I don't know if any of this shit makes sense. There's probably gaps I've left behind. And to be honest, like it's really difficult for me to construct what matrons in a patriarchy are supposed to do because the information that the responsibilities of women and what they have has been so diluted and warped that it's almost impossible to find any sort of understanding of that that's not within the church itself. So it's very difficult because we've lived in a culture for the past 100 years of just complete destruction of female duties, and that you really only get them from church now. So I'm going to go take a shower. I'll be back a little bit.